This piece of content is brought to you by JLC PCB. You can get their transparent Flex PCBs for only $5.80 with the coupon below, and that is a $10 off coupon. And you can also, by the way, get 25% off Microsoft software at CDkeyoffer.com if you use offer code Broken Silicon. And we'll talk about these sponsors more later, but for now, let's just get on with the show. Welcome to Broken Silicon, a gaming hardware podcast. I am your host, Just Got Home Tom, and I am joined by my co-host.
In an undisclosed safe house, Dan.
That is right. You do look like you're in a safe house. I think it's fair for me to say that you are moving to Wisconsin for a new job. We will leave it at that after having finished college and and the stuff having to do with grad school and stuff. And so you're in a hotel, and as luck would have it, I visited you and, of course, our parents in Minnesota this week, and then this is how it ended up. The day after I left, you drove to Wisconsin to move into your new place, and so I have just gotten home and scrambled to make sure the script is ready, and you've scrambled to set up a mic in a hotel room.
Yeah, and next episode, hopefully I will have like a nicer looking setup than the corner of a hotel room, but we work with what we've got.
Yeah, I mean, don't be afraid to play around with it. I mean, I was scared when I moved to my current house. The first video I did, I think there may have just been a simple light in the background with like the YouTube sign on a table. And then I had one light I could change the colors of. And I was like, oh, I could just like have this janky one light change colors behind me instead of the Joe Rogan-esque attic-like room I used to have. Or former Joe Rogan-esque, when everyone made fun of how his set looked. Actually, mine looked similar.
When you were the tunnel loft, it kind of looked like a tunnel from the set.
And then eventually I just came up with this idea. I had this thing where we can change lights between the different companies we're talking about. I don't really think it hurt views, though, honestly, that much to have this slowly materializing new set behind me. So I'm excited to see how your new place evolves. For monetary reasons, only for my gain. I do not care about you at all.
Well, I'll try to make the background look nice. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, we'll see. It'll be fun. But what we need to see now, though, is corrections. We actually have one this week. Remember, if you join the Moore's Laws at Patreon, you can submit corrections and tell us how stupid we are. Joking aside, though, we really do appreciate having some way of keeping track of when we make a claim that's wrong. And Carbon Cry writes in, as he often does for corrections, to be honest. It says, Intel's Workstation Xeon is still Sapphire Rapids, by the way. There was a refresh, yes, but they aren't using Emerald Rapids silicon, technically. That's because Emerald Rapids has 5 megabytes of L3 per core, but the newest Xeon Ws still only have 1.875 megabytes per core, which is how much a Sapphire Rapids core has. So I have to thank him for the correction. I have been referring to it as like an Emerald Rapids refresh. It's funny, some of my sources still refer to it as that. And that's because despite the cache difference, I guess the Intel reps they speak with refer to it as an Emerald Rapids performance increase. And after some of my contacts have tested it, they say it might as well be, because it does boost higher. And I forgot what it was. It used 20% less energy while boosting 10% higher. It actually has the same performance uplift, I think almost 1-to-1 of Emerald Rapids. So I don't know if it's technically the tweaks of Emerald Rapids in a new stepping of the silicon without increasing the cache. That wouldn't surprise me if that's what it is. But to be fair to myself, the reason I keep saying that is everyone tells me it might as well be Emerald Rapids. But if it doesn't have the same megabytes per core, then obviously
not the same
it isn't literally.
Obviously, yes.
It is yet another sub-variant of all of these architectures Intel insists on making instead of just one. All right. Let us then move on to our first story then, which is story number 1. AMD Zen 6 Venice specs confirm. So Quoting myself from 2 years ago, actually, almost. Epic Venice, that is, I said the large core count one for servers. It's expected to hit at least 256 cores on SP7. And back then, I did think that meant that increases for and core count on AM5 and laptop were likely. So this is reported 2 years ago. And then now quoting from AMD, I believe from their AI event on June 12th, 6th gen AMD Epic Venice CPU, powered by the groundbreaking Zen 6 architecture. The CPUs are expected to offer up to 250 cores with up to 1.7x the performance and 1.6 terabytes of memory bandwidth to help sustain maximum performance across the entire Helios rack. So if the confirmation of Zen 6 using 2 nanometer recently wasn't enough, we've now received further validation from AMD themselves of our information about Venice being correct, this time being that Zen 6 on Epic goes up to 256 cores, which is very vindicating. We now have 2 nanometer confirmed, core counts confirmed by AMD. These AI events are usually, what do we call them? The AMD MLID rumor power hour, where they just bat off a bunch of rumors we've had for a couple of years. I think the first time we made that joke was Bergamo.
That sounds right.
But, I don't know. I don't have much else to add about this. I mean, I think they confirmed also PCIe Gen 6. And yeah, Venice goes up to 256 cores on Epic. That's now 100% true. It uses 2 nanometer. That's now 100% true. So while AMD hasn't verified 24 cores for desktop yet, same sources that told me 256 told me 24 cores, people. So you can take these Zen 6 rumors and have the challenge to the bank now. And I think that's very exciting.
Yeah, it is. And I am excited for 24 core desktop.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess I remember vaguely talking about this like 2 years ago now. And thanks for reminding us, AMD.
Yes. Techno writes him and says, not that it matters much considering that GPUs cannot even max at Gen 4 right now. And frankly, Gen 3 is only starting to become a bottleneck if you have 16 lanes. But are we expecting Zen 6 and, I don't know, maybe Panther or Nova Lake to support PCIe 6.0, considering they finalized the specs of 6.0 in 2022, with 5.0 being finalized in 2019 and generally releasing in 2022? So let's do the Intel part first. I don't think Panther Lake does, to my knowledge, but Nova Lake PCI Gen 6, I don't think a source has told me it will, but I think it probably will. I mean, gun up to my head, I'd go, yeah, I think so. We had Gen 5 with Alder Lake. We have Gen 5 with Arrow Lake motherboard platforms. Nova Lake isn't until at least over a year from now. I think that will have Gen 6.
I mean, I would guess anything coming out like 2026 or later probably, but I don't know. It's not completely essential at this point, so
that's why I wouldn't say 100% because I just don't think it's probably necessary. Yeah, but I would suspect that Nova Lake will. Now, when it comes to Zen 6, Carbon Cry has a note saying that it's presumable that the new motherboards will have it, but I would actually push back and say, I don't know. I mean, I've seen a lot of APUs have Gen 4 support for a long time before they got any Gen 5 support. And I've heard that there should be variants of Zen 6 Epic with a new socket or something that has DDR6 support. And yet I'm told AM5, well, we know AM5 doesn't have DDR6 support. So Zen 6 on desktop will not. So I don't know why we would assume PCIe Gen 6 support for desktop. Might it? Maybe. I mean, but if we think about the prior, and this is, past performance is not a promise of future performance, but what do we have? Zen, we have PCIe 3.0 with Zen 1, right? PCIe 3.0, I believe.
That sounds right.
And then PCIe 4.0 was, added with Zen 2. And then that was it. They never added, and I don't think Zen 5 got to like 5.0 or anything, but correct me if I'm wrong, but that was that. And then they moved on to AM5, and that started with, I guess that did start with 5.0, didn't it?
Yeah.
Zen 4 did. Yes. So I actually, my own argument works against me. But so, actually, I don't know. I would give it 50-50. I can see an argument for both. On the one hand, it would be a good way to make a new powerful platform and chipset, a new chipset, have a lot of new features, like have a real reason to get it. Like maybe it adds more PCIe lanes, but also it adds Gen 6 support. And then this is the swan song for AM5. And also that'd be much appreciated because I think a lot of people are disappointed by the Zen 4 to Zen 5 performance increase. I mean, it's better than what Intel's giving you,
well,
to be fair. But
and the new chipsets were kind of a dud, at least.
The new chipsets were very fairly criticized. I will say the new X80 870E is complete BS. But so that's the one hand. Like, it would be a good way to say, hey, here's 24 Zen 6 cores. Not only that, more PCIe lanes, Gen 6 support. Bam, this is basically like Threadripper, and this is going to hold up against Nova Lake on all fronts. On the other hand, boy, did they have trouble having Gen 5 support consistent when
true.
they first brought it out with Zen 4. That was a big issue. And so, is there any point when we're just getting Gen 5 GPUs? I mean, that's my only thing, is I don't know if there's any point whatsoever. And so I would just say, and this is unfortunately not a very satisfying answer to you, Techno, 50-50. I mean, I would say I should probably know a lot more about this very soon. But the diagrams, in fact, actually, one more thing here just to complete this. Let me open up a diagram here. I'm not seeing at least any of the diagrams I've seen for Zen 6. I just opened up a random one, mention Gen 6. So, and I still see mostly Gen 4 for a lot of these upcoming Zen 6 APU. So if that's not, I don't know why we would bet on them bringing Gen 6 if it adds any cost or complexity, which it would. Besides the fact that it would be a nice new sticker to put on the box that makes Zen 6 feel very future-proof. So I'm 50-50. I could see an argument for either side.
I mean, the only thing is if they want AM5 to have like a very long tail like AM4 did with that they kept selling, or still kind of continuing to sell, or it's just dying now, really. Then it would be nice for the final platform to actually have full PCI 6 support.
But so I don't know. I could see an argument for either side. All the time, AMD brings some new DDR support to some architecture, but not another variant of it, or PCIe Gen, or so on and so forth. And I don't really see a need for this at all. At the same time, they haven't increased it since the start of Zen 4, even if they don't need to. It would be a decent marketing option. I would say this. Here's my conclusion. I would be very, very surprised if most or half or more than one chipset for Zen 6's new chipset gets PCIe Gen 6. If it does get Gen 6, I would almost bet money this early, with no sources telling me this.
Premium one or something.
It's just the very top model, and maybe it comes with an extra 4 lanes for NVMe as well. Maybe it gets one Gen 6 NVMe slot, times 16 Gen 6 for the graphics card, but then it gets like 3 Gen 5s and like 2 Gen 4s, and that makes this kind of feel like a Threadripper platform. I could see that, but I don't think anything below that's getting Gen 6, because there's really no point, and it would just be so that AMD could market their flagship Zen 6 platforms, Zen 6 Gen 6 platforms, as being fully future-proofed and competitive with Intel's Nova Lake that will come out after Zen 6. But I guess that's what I would say is I could see it for the top chipset, but don't expect AMD to come out and be like, A920 has Gen 6. I don't think most of the lineup's going to have it next year. Okay, let us now then move on to story number 2. AMD announces MI350X and MI355X. Quoting here from Tom's Hardware, AMD unveiled its new MI350X and 355X GPUs for AI workloads here at its Advancing AI 2025 event in San Jose, California, claiming the new accelerators offer a 3x performance boost over the prior MI300X, which positions the company to improve its competitive footing against its market-leading rival, Nvidia, quite a bit. AMD claims it beats Nvidia in like-for-like inference benchmarks by up to 1.3x and leads by up to 1.13x in select training workloads. AMD also claims a 4x increase in AI compute performance compared to prior generation and MI300X models, and a 35 times increase in inference performance. Jeez. Largely achieved by transitioning to the new CDNA4 architecture and utilizing a smaller, more advanced process for their compute chiplets. I believe it's now 3 nanometer instead of 5, so it's quite an uplift. AMD's production MI350 platforms began shipping last month. So, yep, MI355X was the big news coming from AMD's AI 2025 event, at least if you're an investor. In a nutshell, AMD is competing in even terms with NVIDIA's current best, Blackwell, not 1.0, Blackwell Ultra, a refresh of the original Blackwell with more memory. AMD offers comparable raw number crunching potential, same memory size and speed, and with ROCm 7, increasingly capable software to use that performance. AMD has finally made a pure AI GPU. Even MI300 is designed to offer a lot of FP64 performance for HPC, but not CDNA 4 is a slight downgrade, in fact, in that respect, instead of focusing purely on matrix tensor execution with small number formats. There, AMD gains some interesting advantages like extra acceleration of FP6 and available in block number formats, which promises to offer the benefits of small floats with the precision and accuracy of larger number formats. The distinct disadvantage, though, of MI355X is a lack of scale-up. Well, NVIDIA is making whole racks with 72 GPUs that present as a single node. AMD only goes up to 8 GPUs per node. This can have significant performance repercussions for larger models. AMD's own true rack scale solution will come in late 2026 as the Helios rack with CDNA 5, Zen 6, and Pensando Vulkan DPUs. Overall, therefore, the event showed that AMD is indeed catching up to NVIDIA. Yes, they are still behind, but getting ever closer. And the amount of use cases where AMD makes sense for AI is widening, and even in software. The CUDA moat is crumbling. AMD made many acquisitions and deep partnerships with AI companies. They are improving their ROCm stack faster and faster. Their outreach to smaller developers and startups is also improving. And so, yeah, I don't have much to say about this, except that CDNA is more and more and more becoming its own thing with a focus on AI versus the gaming. I guess we'll see what happens when they try to merge that back together or how much they do. I would still expect, it wouldn't surprise me if they kind of had a merger, but still one-offs like NVIDIA does with Volta and so forth, and Rubin. Not Volta, like they do with Hopper and Rubin. Technically, you could say Volta was a gaming architecture too, I suppose. And it just takes me back to like AMD's AI event a year ago. AMD, we were looking at this and they're just like, MI every 50, like 250, 300, like all this stuff. I had rumors of 350, I believe I leaked back then. And it was like, okay, so AMD is launching a new generation here, like over one a year. And NVIDIA is saying they are too, but so far Blackwell had a lot of delays. They seem to be delayed to where AMD is actually catching up, which I believe Dan a year ago, you said it seemed like actually at this cadence, AMD might kind of catch up within a few years. And it seems like they're still on that path.
Oh yeah, it was very clear back then. And now especially that is a big ambition of them. And it makes sense because I guess the new gold is AI. So AMD needs to make some shovels for it, or pickaxes for it, whatever analogy we're calling a GPU today. I will say that I'm curious how big of a deficiency that ends up being, the lack of scalability, because I don't know, based on the AI presentations I've seen from NVIDIA, they think their scalability is a very, very big part of their, or a very big advantage on their end, and AMD needs to catch up there too.
Yeah, which again, I guess they plan to next year. I guess they're taking one bite of the elephant at a time. And the only other thing I'd say is, well, NVIDIA would focus on the one thing they still crush AMD at, but
true,
it's probably a fair thing for them to focus on. The only other thing I would add to this that clicked in my head as I was looking through this information is, again, I don't know this, that AMD's rumored 9080 XT, 9090 XT is on N3X. What I will say is AMD announcing something launching right now on 3 nanometer, when I've heard they might launch 3 nanometer Navi 48X variants at the end of this year. I saw a lot of people go, 3 nanometer won't be ready. It will be. It will be ready this year. It's ready now. And seeing them launch an AI product now and having rumors of a possibly partially gaming product half a year after that, that's a standard cadence that further makes me wonder if they are using 3 nanometer for this rumored Navi 48 Ultimate. So that's the gaming. That's how we relate that back to gamers.
Bend.
It's the gaming bend, everybody. Quick Jumper writes in and says, I'd like your thoughts on how AMD's MI400 will compare to NVIDIA's Rubin or Rubin Ultra. AMD's MI300 approach with its tight CPU GPU integration through chiplets seems more advanced than Nvidia's direction. By 2027, in fact, Nvidia's best solution appears to just be 4 reticle-sized GPUs glued together, which doesn't seem particularly innovative. Yeah, I noticed that. They just seem to have bigger and bigger GPUs and more of them glued together. Well, AMD clearly lags in software ecosystem, developer tools, and possibly in specialized AI hardware like tensor cores. Their chiplet strategy allows them to build smaller, potentially higher yielding GPU components that they can iteratively improve. NVIDIA seems stuck with these massive designs that might face yield challenges. Do you think AMD's approach gives them a long-term manufacturing advantage, or does NVIDIA's leadership in other areas outweigh this? I mean, in some form factors, the simple answer is yes. This is an advantage. This gives AMD an advantage, but notice underline that word, an advantage. NVIDIA has other advantages. Tons of money, scale, contracts. And when you're that big of a, when you manufacture at this scale, as was explained to me years ago by someone at NVIDIA, if you have to disable 20% of your chips into these specific niche models for all of these people, whatever, they need those models, and it's actually cheaper than designing all these chiplets anyways. It wouldn't be for AMD because they have less market share, but for NVIDIA, I don't know. You know what I mean?
And when you're selling one of those for, what is it, like 30 grand or something? And
50, yeah.
Yeah, 50. And you're having like $1 billion purchases of those at a certain point, like, oh, sure. The one advantage is that we can scale it like crazy. That's a pretty nice advantage when we're talking about $1 billion contracts.
Yeah, and once you're at that scale and you're a market leader and you're getting that much margin anyways, it's getting to the point where the margin on these is hilarious. Anything that gets in the way of time to market is not worth bothering with. If AMD has this crazy chiplet architecture that costs half as much to make for the same performance, let's say hypothetically, but they come out a year later, it's worth probably just launching a year sooner with the thing people wanted then. Again, getting be the first person to sell pickaxe at double the price at a gold rush is the analogy we always use. But I think what will be interesting to me is if AMD does start to catch up with more advanced designs, matching performance with lower cost, and NVIDIA doesn't have one of the main reasons you would do a simpler layout is to save time to market. Because again, Blackwell was supposed to be, rushing out, Rubin rushing out. Everything I've seen in roadmaps is that's gotten delayed beyond what NVIDIA was hoping to achieve, what I leaked a year ago. And so I don't know, maybe there's only so fast you can move. And if you have an assembly line of like a design team working on the IP blocks over here, design team working on how the chiplets go together here, and they can work concurrently, is it really saving any time if the bottleneck's going to be getting the architecture to work anyways? I don't know. So I think that will be an interesting thing to watch. But look, it's an advantage for AMD, but I'm not ready to say it's a advantage that makes them win.
Oh yeah. If we're just looking at the AI competition, Nvidia is clearly winning that. So still, as far as sales go.
Yeah. All right. Let us now move on to story number 3. Are you too depressed to go outside because of how expensive Microsoft software is? Well, there's absolutely no need for that. Just go to CDkeyoffer.com. That's right. This piece of content is once again sponsored by CDkeyoffer.com. And I say once again because they've been a fantastic sponsor of Moore's Law is Dead and its community for many years. And that's because they always deliver the best pricing reliably for Microsoft products like Windows operating systems, Office software, and they also sell games and other things as well. So make sure you check them out, especially during their Easter sale going on right now. And if you do, use offer code BrokenSilicon to save 25% on all Microsoft software, and then Die Shrink to save 3% off on everything else on the website. The community uses them. I use them for my new Zen 4 X3D desktop. And Jesse here needs to stop moping around, and I think use them as well. So that's once again, support Moore's Law is Dead by going to CDkeyoffer.com through the links below today. It's okay, Jesse. It's okay. AMD Zen 7 desktop targets 32 cores on AM6, according to a new leak from, me. So quoting from the video, the current plan for consumer Zen 7 is dual 16-core chiplets that will still utilize Vcache to increase the total L3, meaning L3 is in the chiplet and in Vcache, and the core chiplet and in Vcache, I should clarify. Don't worry, though. The IPC of the classic variant and the 3D variant is supposed to be comparable, with the classic variant likely having higher voltages and clock speeds than the 3D core variant. Now, I wasn't sure if we're going to get these fancy 3D chiplets on a desktop. That is to say, no L3 cache in the core chiplets for this variant, but a ton of it in a chiplet, not Vcache, an actual L3 cache chiplet with other functions below it. But no matter how they do it, the IPC shouldn't be that different. In the version they used for consumers, ergo for gamers, is what we probably care about here. It's still probably going to have plenty of performance, people. And in addition to that, I'm told 16 cores per consumer core chiplet, but I'm sure there'd also be epic variants. And they should be a bit bigger and therefore require a new socket, AM6. And so there you go. After recent confirmations of some of our leaks, we now have a new one, the continuation of Zen 7, and a Zen 7 variant that needs 3D stacking, but a variant that does not need it. Let me see, what else can I add here? I'll just get through a lot of this write-up and say, let me just summarize. Zen 7 seems like it will go up to 32 cores. Number one, it will require AM6. Number two, it uses 1.4 nanometer. Number three, and they're going to drive for really, really high clock speeds relative to the previous gen, just like they did with Zen 6 number 4. And so I think that's pretty much all there is to say. Right? Higher core counts, AM6 probably. And just like we're excited for Zen 6 to have a 12-core unified CCD, I think we'll be excited for a unified 16-core CCD for Zen 7.
Yeah, 16-core CCD sounds exciting. I'm curious how much it will matter over a 12-core CCD for gamers, but definitely something. I'm very excited for especially the 12 cores, though, going into the future.
Yeah. I mean, actually, on that note, let me play a voicemail, which, of course, join the right tier. You can submit voicemails now to Moore's Law is Dead.
A few thoughts on how popular a 32-core Zen 7 processor would be on the AM6 platform. Point 1. If you get a useful performance improvement from a second CCD with Zen 5, then I'd expect that to continue with Zen 7. Point 2. The higher end the AM6 platform is, the more useful 32 cores will be. Point 3. I would expect server variants to be particularly popular in the low-end server market. Point 4. But overall, if we consider what gamers are likely to do, I think it's likely that demand will be lower because prices will be higher. And final point, if AMD charges significantly more per CCD with Zen 7, then they'll likely need to do something new for budget AM6 builds.
Yes, and so that came from Karino Sugata. And it actually, hearing this and then also seeing some other like discussions of Zen 7 in the Moore's Law Zed Discord after the video came out, a large part of the end section, if you will, of this recent Zen 7 leak that came out of the channel from me here was spent talking about, do we even need 32 cores? Like, I have a suspicion they're going to 32 cores because they had 16 for a very long time. They feel they need to make up for lost ground. They've probably seen the rumors or just know from their own sources at Intel that Intel is probably going to go up to 40, or I don't know what I think I've heard even maybe 48 cores or something with one of these architectures, within the next 4 years. And by then they'll want to have their own 32 core, 64 thread variant to compete with the 48 core, 48 thread variants that might be out there, or who knows, it might add back hyper-threading, I've heard too, from Intel. But I think there's a fair point to be made here. I've seen a lot of people say this after the video came out, that frankly, it's just the fact that we can get 16 cores in one CCD that is the very exciting thing. Now, a lot of other people also said that it would drive down lower costs for the cheaper ones, and I push back on that a little bit. I mean, this is going to be on 1.4 nanometer, maybe X. Will the price per core go down? Sure, I think so. I don't know where it's at right now. What is it like? I mean, I guess technically you can get like an 8 core for like $300, let's say. I know sometimes less, but let's just call it that. And so, yeah, it's like $37.50 per core. Could this go down to like $30 per core or something, by the time we get to Zen 7? Yes, but that's not going to be a 16 core. You're not going to get a 16 core for $300. Like you get an 8 core for $300 now.
Crossing my fingers that the 16 cores go down to like $500 or something like that, but I wouldn't bet on that.
I think 500 is possible and 400 is possible. 300 is not happening.
But yeah, I mean, I could also see in the future what happens is that the 950 is I don't know if that will be 24 cores or something, or if they'll do 16 cores now, but I could just see the 2 CCD variants for desktop becoming, more and more like we've talked about, like they kind of quasi HEDT thing. And if they have enough IO, like if they go to like 48 lanes, which I don't know if that's too many, but
I think 32 would be enough to satisfy people personally.
Probably, but like if they went all the way up to 48 and you could sell a 32 core, I mean, that is basically just an HEDT at that point. Mm-hmm. So I could see that easily for more, people that don't want to spend like 10, 15
13 grand on a CPU.
Oh yeah, just like on the CPU.
Multiple, like $1,000 on the motherboard.
Yeah. Instead, they want to just spend maybe like $6 grand total on their HEDT, and that gives them an avenue to do that
instead of 20 grand or something. Yeah.
Yeah, with like a 10,970 or whatever they decide
11,
to call it.
11,
9, yeah, wherever they'll
80. I don't know. Whatever they're going to call the thing.
The AI 570, 595 or some BS.
That's but no, I would say the only other thing there is, and this dovetails nicely off of what you said, it depends how good AM6 is. I mean, if AM6 is like you get 4 more NVMe lanes and like that's all they do, but DDR6 support, it costs a lot, then yeah, I guess the 32 core would probably be very unpopular. But if they had this segmented, I don't know what it will be called, 1090 WX motherboard chipset that comes with double the PCIe lanes at least of everything else, Gen 6 support for both DDR and for PCIe, and then all these other features to really act as Threadripper, then yeah, I guess that would make the 32 core actually, I would take that back, very, very popular. Again, I would just push back. I'll be curious to see what happens. It's going to depend on what happens with games. I don't know, maybe Fallout 5 comes out and it actually could use 16 cores really well, but I don't see 16 replacing 8. I see 12 or 10 cores replacing 8 and where it is in the lineup. 16, replacing where 12 maybe is now. And then 24 and 32 cores are just for people who want the best or for people who buy the most expensive chipset.
Yeah, I do think with 16 core CCDs, 12 and 16 cores are going to become very popular with gamers. And I don't think you're really going to need to go past that for most people, but gamers also do like spending a lot of money on their new toys. So I'm sure a fair number of people will want the 32 cores anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. There will be a part of the same, a lot of people that just want it because it is the top one. And besides that, Carrie also suggested that there's going to be something there's something's going to have to give with what they do for the low end. I mean, sure. I agree. I would think that what they're probably going to end up doing is having 32 and 24 cores be Ryzen 9. Ryzen 7 be 12 and 16, and Ryzen 5 be 10 and 8. And then, that's it, and then I believe a year or so after it comes out, whatever is the successor to Bumblebee will come, and that will just be like 4 plus 4 plus 4 or 2 plus 2 plus 4 plus 2 plus 2 or something, and that will be just what they slot in for like 250 as a Ryzen 3. I think at a certain point they're probably gonna need to
move to different CCDs for their lower end, because I just can't imagine they would need to go below 8 cores for any CCD, really. Like, I don't know why they would disable one of those all the way down to 6 cores or something.
Yeah. Techno writes in, Speaking of AM6, you said that it's expected to be a little bigger than AM5. Do you think we will see 3 CCDs on mainstream for AM6 once that comes around, which would RIP Nova Lake a new one? Well, would it though? Because who needs 48 cores? Like, most people seem to just be looking at single threading. I don't know. And they have 200 single. Yeah. So it goes through possible multi-core benchmarks, but also memory channels. I think they're still going to be the standard. Two or
Dual
4.
channel.
Effectively what we call dual channel. I know there's more channels per stick now or something, but 2 ranks or whatever it is for I probably said that wrong too, for Zen 7 and AM6. And no, I don't think 3 CCDs. In fact, the biggest reason they don't need more than 16 plus 16 chiplets. And actually, I'd say the biggest argument for why you would do 3 different chiplets in addition to an IO die is so they could swap out NPUs or graphics dies. That'd be the biggest reason I would do that if I was AMD. I besides that, I don't think you need more than 32 cores on desktop. You just do not. No more than 2 chiplets. It just becomes complicated.
I mean, with 16-core CCDs, I think the bulk of the CPUs that they sell will be single CCD. I don't see a reason for 3.
Yeah. Well, let us now move on to yet another AMD leak. This one, a little minor, but whatever. With story number 4, Gorgon Point leaked to have 65 top NPU models. So I'm just going to read a tweet that I put out actually while I was on vacation. It's funny. I actually knew this for like a week. And I was like, well, maybe this could become some part of a video. Then the Zen 7 video I was preparing before I went on vacation became big enough where I'm like, I feel like if I add Gorgon Point to this, it's just weird. It's going to be one of those things where the video could be short, not crazy short, but like the right length, get through all the points and then be done instead of then, oh, and by the way, here's what I think about. But then I saw that there was going to be an AI presentation by AMD and they revealed Strix, remember, at one of them. And I'm like, oh no, AMD is going to reveal this before I leak it. And then they didn't. But whatever. So now we're making this a major story in this Broken Silicon. Because I actually have a lot more to add to this than I said in the tweet. But the tweet said, AMD Gorgon Point 65 tops. That's what a source of mine just told me they saw in a briefing. To me, that suggests the real world performance uplift could be like Phoenix to Hawk Point when it comes to Strix to Gorgon Point. On paper, it won't look like much, but if you check the Fox's testing of Hawk Point, you can see that in sub 30 watt systems, AMD actually achieved an impressive uplift that was well beyond what the identical on paper specs suggested. Will that make this refresh competitive with the Intel Panther Lake? I don't know. I doubt it wins. At least it shouldn't, considering it's competing with 18A Panther Lake with a 4 nanometer refresh of Strix. But honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if this cheaper AMD APU manages to be somewhat comparable to Panther Lake in a lot of apps, especially ones that use an NPU. Although, let's be honest, how many apps actually use NPUs right now? Laughing emoji. But I that's my overall thoughts. I was told by an OEM there was a briefing. 65 tops. I know there's rumors out there with screenshots that show 55 plus tops. And I think everyone took that to mean a 10% increase of what's in Strix. Mm-hmm. And all of those people forgot that 375 exists that already has 55 tops. So AMD telling partners over 55 tops is literally saying it will increase by at least 1. Duh. And
6.1
or 55.1 tops were faster than Intel. But yeah, I think 65 is more notable. It's like, yeah, this is like almost a 20% increase from the prior generation. Who knows? Maybe this would be the standard model. There might even be 70 or 75 tops, overclocked models. And if they can get another 20% out of this NPU, I think in real world boost clocks, we could see another 10% performance, maybe from Strix to Gorgon Point. Although I'm not sure of that yet. But this does, to me, suggest this isn't going to be some 3% uplift like a lot of people were worried Hawk Point would be over Phoenix. Gorgon Point's probably going to feel like at least a half gen better, if not a smaller gen, but a full gen better.
Oh yeah, I mean, I like even when they do these. If AMD keeps doing those half steps because they need to put out a new thing every year for laptops, it's nice to see them actually give some considerable uplift every generation, even if in a lot of ways this is just a kind of optimized version of what's already out.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know if we have much else to say about this. from what I've seen, it seems like single threading is going to be 3 to 6% faster. Multi-threading, I don't know, 5 to 10% faster. But that's peak. Who knows? Maybe in 30-watt situations, it's much, much better. When does the Xbox...
So the top link I see is supposedly leaked for the price and release date. So
and it's holiday 2025 is the... All right, so that's... I just wanted to make sure it wasn't officially announced that the Xbox Ally X launches next month. The fact that they're saying holiday, I mean, maybe the Z2 uses Gorgon point and it's actually a lot faster than the Z1 because of that. That would not surprise me. So that's another thing to keep in mind, is this Gorgon point that comes out around when the Xbox handheld comes out. Is this actually maybe that the Xbox uses that and it's actually going to be substantially better than we thought? I don't know. More food for thought there. But speaking of handhelds, let us finally pivot from the AMD stories to Nintendo with story number 5. Nintendo Switch 2 launched and reviewed, quoting from CNN, then GameSpot. The Nintendo Switch 2 is without question one of the best consoles I've ever got my hands on and the best Nintendo Switch yet. Well, yes, the PS5 is the best PlayStation yet, too, compared to the PS4. Retaining everything that made the original a staple in millions of households while adding some welcome quality of life improvements and a few innovative, delightfully Nintendo-y features. And hey, that new Mario Kart game is pretty fun. Here's GameSpot. The Switch 2 is a full successor to the original Switch with many of the same high highs and low lows of the original. It does feel like a more premium piece of hardware, and some thoughtful improvements like magnetic Joy-Cons and Game Chat are nice to have. But as always with Nintendo hardware, the real treat is Nintendo software. Thanks to its increased horsepower, the Nintendo Switch 2 should be able to reasonably handle high-end third-party titles like Cyberpunk 2077, alongside Nintendo exclusives like Mario Kart World. That's a major advantage that its competitors can't match, and more than reason enough to make a happy Switch 2 owner. Well, so there you go. The Switch 2 is out, finally, and it is what we expected it to be. It's very much a second Switch, building on what came before. Nintendo found the winning formula and stuck with it. The device is already obsolete in many ways compared to the newest handhelds announced, but, well, so was the original Switch. And despite stronger competition... Well, that's not true. When it first came out, it was the strongest handheld, Carbon Cry. This is his right up here. But let me continue. And despite stronger competition from PC handhelds and eventually a PS handheld, the Switch 2 still trades on Nintendo's reputation as a legendary game maker. There are other warts on this console, though. Cyberpunk 2077 works. It often drops to 20 FPS or lower, though, in handheld mode, which isn't as promising for future third-party titles. My memory is, didn't Cyberpunk come out in 2020? This is like The Witcher 3. People are like, can you believe the Switch runs The Witcher 3? A game from a year before the... Yeah, I can. Can I believe that this runs a 5-year-old game? Yes. Very easily I can, actually. You would hope it can run all 5-year-old AAA games. And I've also saw some testing showing that if you play in handheld mode, like the battery life is like less than an hour. So this is quite a wart. And this is now. What is going to happen when I believe a new Cyberpunk expansion's announced? Although I guess it probably would be that different. But, what's going to happen... when, I don't know, Fallout 5 comes out, or that new Naughty Dog game comes to PC and they try to port it to the Switch. I guess we'll see if PlayStation will. That's an interesting question. Maybe a bad example.
Nintendo and Sony still hate each other?
Probably. So, what's going to happen when Battlefield 6 comes out? There's a real game that would probably launch on this. And then, in addition to all of these performance issues, VRR being only for a handheld mode is also an embarrassing Nintendo stick-like oversight. And then there's the high MSRP, hiked to $449, and yet by Nintendo's own reports, hey, they've sold 3.5 million units that were shipped in the first 4 days. Anyways, despite the overall product positivity too, the launch was not perfect. Some units with factory testing firmware escaped into the wild, likely aiding attempts to jailbreak the console. I think I've read some people already have, by the way. There also seems to be a common bug where the system doesn't know its battery level, which is a bit of an issue for a handheld. Most worrying are reports of poor panel quality with significant ghosting and smearing in games. This only seems to affect a minority of users, but it's not a good sign to have so many reports of issues at launch. All of these could have been exacerbated by just how delayed Switch 2 was. How many units have been sitting completed in warehouses for many, many months longer than normal, possibly causing damage. Again, because you never know, like, is one warehouse air conditioned? Well, you'd hope so, but they're often not, And so I don't know, that write-up was mostly informed by Carbon Cry. I've given a lot of my opinion with NX Game. I believe in the new Loose Ends, I talk about the Switch 2 a lot. I'd recommend everyone go there if they want my initial impression. I actually don't have that much to change about what I said, which is, I know there's going to be people that say it's selling well. Guys, the Wii U sold out. Okay, so like let's just get it's going to sell out. All right. The question is, does it keep selling out? Because I don't think it's going to be like the Wii U, but I really am getting 3DS vibes here, which is something seems off and unready about this. And Michael from NX Gamer, listened to the last Broken Silicon, actually. I have to recommend that a lot. His understanding is the software just seems half-baked. Developers I've talked to say that as well, and that's very weird to me. So it's like, I don't know. I think the analogy I made...
Something seems weird at Nintendo, just in general, over the past couple of years. They got a lot leakier than they used to be. There's all these... I know they're behind the scenes, but there's very evident delays to this console. Like, this was supposed to come out much earlier than it did. Something's weird.
Yeah, and it's like the analogy I made is... I mean, I know for a fact that the Nvidia SoC was done... what was it? Was it 22 or 23? And I feel like Jensen walked up to the CEO of Nintendo and said, "Here it is." And they went, "Oh, shit, we got to finish this." And then that's why it took 2 years to come out, because I expected the most polished software on earth with no issues. And yet I'm seeing reports of people having crashing units, ghosting things. To me, it feels like it kind of like Blackwell. It was supposed to come out at one point. It got delayed for milking reasons. And then that didn't make it any more polished. It's very odd.
Yeah. Well, if there's an issue with like ghosting with with a subset of people that are getting it, that just sounds like it might need to be you get a new unit, because that's pretty unacceptable to me, in my opinion, especially for a supposed handheld. Then, like the battery level not being displayed or whatever, if that's happening with some units, presumably that can be fixed with an update, so hopefully that's not a big issue going forward. But stuff that worries me is like that really low battery life, where I don't know, I would hope you could play this thing in handheld mode for like a couple hours. 1 hour just doesn't feel like enough, and I don't know.
In most games it lasts multiple
really
hours, but
okay,
still. But that's now, again, what happens when Battlefield 6 comes out. Does that have 30 minutes of battery life?
Yeah, and the problem is that's not something you can really fix either, unless they put out a new version of it that has better battery, which, I don't know, a great way to burn early purchasers, which is, I don't know. I guess the thing I've appreciated from old Sony, they don't really do this as much anymore, but their original models usually were more decked out than their other ones, and they kind of made their newer models cheaper by cutting out features like the PS3. Mm-hmm. Remember, the original fat PS3, frankly, had too many features in it, but it's kind of cool to have that type of stuff.
Yeah, and if you have an old PS3, you have your 4 USB ports, SD slots. You can play PS2 games.
It just has a PS2.
It's PS2 just built into it. Yeah, and then they just made it cheaper and cheaper until they sold you a Foreman grill. Yeah,
but it does make me a little worried that the solution to this might just be one with a better battery life in the future, or a better battery.
Yeah, and that's, again, this piece of content is brought to you by JLC PCB and their Transparent Flex PCB products. In addition to supporting traditional yellow, black, and white PCB materials, JLC PCB now also offers transparent PCBs. Imagine the visual experience electronic products can offer when they shed their bulky enclosures and use transparent PCBs as the foundation. These have high optical clarity with 85% light transmittance for superior visual performance, excellent thermal stability, withstanding temperatures up to 200 degrees Celsius, SMT assembly are compatible with fully supporting surface mount technology on transparent substrates, and they are cost-effective, offering 30 to 50% lower price compared to typical market rates without compromising quality. You can get these PCBs for $5.80 and get a $10 coupon for Flex PCBs at JLC PCB through the link below that supports the channel and also gives you the best possible pricing on these excellent products. So please check those out to support the channel. And thank you once again to JLC PCB for sponsoring this content. Two things. People are going to act like we're trashing it and we're just haters. It's selling well. Guys, we know it's selling well. I'm trying to get one for my girlfriend because she has the old Switch Lite. So she's really someone that could use quite an upgrade and she would appreciate it. I do not dislike the Nintendo Switch 2. I keep doing this spiel. I'm the first person to leak its specs. It would benefit me to overhype as much as possible to play in that, just constantly remind people I was the first one and it's great and it's amazing. But when I leaked it, I thought it was going to launch within the year of the full specs I put out, and it did not. And I just see it as an amazing console that should have launched early 2024 or end of 23, at a minimum late 24. And that's what it should have been. But now here we are, and it feels like the VRR thing was an afterthought. They kind of realized late in the game they had to add. And there's all these little things that were they to just have released it like, again, like end of 23. It didn't even really need VRR. That could have been the first edition. And then now we're in 25, late 25. They could have already had an OLED edition with all these new features added on top. And back then it would have felt awesome. Imagine if a year before the PS5 Pro was even out, they had something that was stronger than the Series S for $399. That would be awesome. I think the design itself is awesome, especially of the Nvidia SoC in it. It's not the strongest thing, but I think it's pretty well balanced. It's pretty good, well thought out design. It's just this really should have launched 2 years ago. That's what we're looking at. It's something that should have launched 2 years ago, and it's still good because it doesn't stop being good, but it's not as impressive as it would have been if the PS5 would have launched in 2022. It would have been less interesting.
Yeah, and it continues to be a good console because it's obviously a very appealing form factor to most people. The hybrid console and portable thing is really popular, and I'm glad that they're continuing to go forward with that instead of doing another stupid gimmick like Nintendo often does.
Yeah, but you don't need a Wii U gimmick. If it's working, don't break it.
Yeah, so I'm glad they're going forward with that same form factor with, I don't know, I guess you would say some minor improvements upon it, or at least that's what they're saying so far. I guess we'll see how that, like the new Joy-Cons, how those age. But the problem though is now it's just very outdated hardware, or very outdated SoC.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's a little stronger than the Steam Deck on paper, at least in the GPU department. And were it to have launched like a year after the Steam Deck, that would have been impressive, but it's not. And all of this leads me to thinking that we'll see, we'll see. I think this thing's going to continue to sell very well for the next 6 months, but I'd be surprised if its sales by year 2 are keeping pace with the Switch 1. I just would be surprised if that was true. And if they don't, I'm going to say, people, they should have launched late 2023. All of those games they wanted to milk on the Switch 1 user base, the new Zelda should have been Switch 2. All of those games that they just released should have actually been Switch 2 launch games, which a lot of people are complaining about the launch lineup. And if they do start dropping in sales, they're going to have to do a new model. And so that comes to the recommendation part. If you're someone like my girlfriend who has a Switch Lite and you play your Switch every week like she does, yeah, get it. Get the Switch 2, because if you play something every week and it's $450 for you to have everything run better and it be a happier experience, it is worth that money to you. Exactly. Absolutely it is. If you're someone who has a Switch OLED and you play it a few times a month, or you already got a Steam Deck, and your Nintendo console is a secondary device, all games are still coming to the Switch pretty much right now. And I suspect there's going to be a new Switch model in 2 years or something that has a better screen, has VRR in the dock, has improved battery life, and has everything fixed that we're hearing about right now. So that would be my advice.
Yeah, and it would be an easier recommendation if it were $350 or something as opposed to $450.
I think $450 is price. I think the new model will be $450, considering where things are going with the world right now. But we'll see. Jumbo, in fact, the number one reason to get it now would be to get it before they raise the price again.
I'm not saying I think it's going to be $350 in a year at all.
But yes, it would be nice if there was a cheaper entry model to it. But that's not going to happen, let's be honest, until they finally sell through Switch One. Like they're trying to price it above it to milk the previous gen. Jumbo Shrimp writes in and says, "Hi Tom, do you think the Nintendo Switch 2 can negatively impact Nvidia's DLSS mindshare? I played Fast Fusion, a racing game marketed as delivering 4K 60 on the console, but found it blurry with noticeable artifacts during motion. According to Digital Foundry, it upscales from 500p to 4K. Whoa, with poor results. I think that FSR2's reputation was damaged because of games upscaling from resolutions below 1080p on the console. Could that happen to DLSS if more developers abuse it on the Switch?" My gut answer is no, not really.
I mean, my question, and I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this, is when you start Fast Fusion, does it open and there's a screen that says powered by an Nvidia DLSS or something? Because if that's the case and it's a poor result, then sure. But I don't think they would do that. And Nintendo generally tends to be a less hardware enthusiast focused than other consoles, and consoles in general are less careless about the hardware anyways. I don't really see how it will break into the general mind share that DLSS is making this game run poorly or something. It's just, I don't know, maybe don't upscale from 500p to 4K.
Yeah, DLSS is an established brand power in PC for years now. If FSR were to have launched on PS5 first before it's on PC, and it was, before FSR has recently come very close to catching up with DLSS. Yeah, I mean, I guess people on PC might be like, oh, isn't that cheap PS5 version of DLSS or something? Then maybe. That's not what we have. Even PSSR got pretty good reviews at first, as being not as good as, well, that was before DLSS 4 was even out. So yeah, not really being better than DLSS 3, but being competitive in some games with a lot of DLSS implementations, and it wasn't even called FSR. So yeah, I just don't see it. I don't really see people blaming Nvidia for this. I think people will know it's because it's a Nintendo game.
Or they will have no association with Nvidia in their head between this game and with this game.
Yeah, unless again they're just like DLSS. And again, this isn't a game that's probably going to sell 20 million copies either. You'd have to have like every Nintendo Switch game saying Nvidia DLSS and then looking bad every time for them to go, wow, Nvidia's cheap. And even then, so who is this hurting? Is this a Nintendo gamer that was maybe planning to go to PC after playing on their Switch 2, but they don't own one already? Is that person going to see what this looks like if they're a mainly Nintendo gamer and go, this looks like crap compared to my Hogwarts Legacy run on the Switch 1? Probably not. To them, it might look amazing, actually. And so, again, it's like, what's the pipeline of person that is like, well, this looks like crap, so I better buy AMD when I finally get into PC gaming? I don't really think so. All right. Let us now, I guess I'll leave the green light on, even though it's powered by AMD with story number 8. ROG Xbox Ally X announced, quoting from The Verge before the editorialization. Microsoft and Asus have been working together over the past year to create not one, but two new ROG Xbox Ally handhelds. Both of these Xbox Ally devices, part of the Project Keenan effort I reported on earlier this year, includes a new full-screen Xbox experience on Windows that's designed to be more handheld-friendly and hide away the complexity of Windows to focus on gaming instead. The white ROG Ally is designed for 720p gaming, and the more powerful ROG Xbox Ally X targets 900 to 1080p gaming on the go. Like the existing ROG Ally and Ally X, the new Xbox Ally and Xbox Ally X, share the same 7-inch 1080p screen, complete with a 120Hz refresh rate and VRR support. So there you go. Asus ROG Xbox Ally X. I'm going to have to stop saying this at some point here. Given its CPU is a fully enabled NPU, one wonders why Microsoft and Asus didn't stick AI into the name as well. But I don't know. I guess it's because these are PC handhelds. They're not really custom hardware. They're not even really running a truly custom version of Windows either, by the way. They have an Xbox mode where some functions of Windows are not enabled to save on system resources, but ultimately it is a Windows device. The Ally X promises to be the strongest handheld yet with a Strix Point or Gorgon Point APU. The Ally non-X, though, is frankly more interesting since, well, from a nerd's perspective, it's a Steam Deck that finally is running Windows. The Z2A APU seems to just be a rebrand of Van Gogh the Steam Deck uses, with Zen 2 and RDNA 2. With the device shipping with a full 1080p screen, this design will provide good enough performance when today's Steam Deck is often barely okay with 800p screens, though. Yeah, I doubt it. I think it's weird they went with this. Overall, the Asus ROG Xbox Ally shows further degradation of the Xbox brand. Xbox is no longer a console brand or even really a hardware brand. It's now a soft brand. It's just games for Windows 11 Live, trading on the legacy of the first two consoles of the name. Yeah, and a point I brought up to NX Gamer when he was on, again, can't recommend that episode enough. This is a person who is really an expert in semiconductors and for his professional life, but also does like digital foundry like work for IGN. Really good person to have on. Actually, 30 minutes after we heard this happen. So great timing for the channel, for both of our channels, really. But I pointed out to Michael, NX Gamer, that ROG is in the name first. Like that to me is crazy. It's Republic of Gamers Xbox Ally, also Asus X. Why not just call this the Xbox Ally? Xbox Ally X, Xbox Ally S. The fact that they even put ROG in the beginning, to me, that tells me they think Asus has stronger brand power in handhelds than Xbox does.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't know how big of a participant Xbox was in this because I thought it was a little funny, the announcement video, just like, and what if we added an Xbox button to it? And it's like, okay, I guess that's a way to keep the brand alive. The Xbox brand is now consoles. Was consoles. Now it's just a button that they throw onto the ROG Ally.
The Xbox app,
I don't know.
Xbox Game Bar in Windows. It is becoming a button.
Yeah, where I guess this is a more or controller or intentional design or whatever they wanted to say. Or in Linus's video, I think they talking about it. I heard him make a little snide joke about how it's meant to feel like a Xbox controller, but the handles kind of feel more like a DualSenses. But,
looking at them, you're right.
But I don't know. It as far as the design goes, I think it looks fine. I think it's confusing as an Xbox product, though, and I don't know. It just seems like almost like Asus was like, sure, we can do this, I guess. That's kind of what it feels like to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so let me see here. Planet 9 writes in, just like you can if you support us on Patreon, and says, I was surprised that the Xbox Ally couldn't actually run Xbox games, rather than the oops, it's just Windows approach. If the Xbox console is dead, why doesn't Microsoft take advantage of this? What do you think is their plan? Well, I mean, look, if they were to support full Xbox backwards compatibility, meaning it would actually let you log in with your Xbox account that you have on your Series X and you had on your 360, and it had all of those and you could download them and they worked. Is that feasible on paper? Absolutely it is. But I mean, now they've got to program for 2 more configurations. One that is between the Series S and the Series X in performance, and one that is, yeah, I'd say weaker than the Series S, but it has enough RAM, maybe? I mean, so then they'd have to go in and find a way to make every developer support all of these with some patch, and that would be a nightmare. And so that's why they're not doing it. And I don't think we should be surprised. Having said that, I think it's a slap in the face to Xbox gamers. I mean, people say we hate on Xbox too much, but let me reach out to all of you Xbox fans. You're happy in Xbox handheld cannot play your Xbox games you've been buying for 20 years. What does that show you about who hates who? Because I think Xbox hates you. Xbox hates their fans, and they won't let you play your games you bought. And that's fucked up. So I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like this is no way around it. There's no other way to take this. Then Xbox is done. They are done with their fans that have been supporting them on console. Their new Xbox console does not let you play the games you've been buying. And a lot of people will gloss over that and say, well, it's really a Windows handheld. They decided to call it Xbox. And if PlayStation launched a new handheld and it couldn't play your PlayStation games, people would be justifiably mad. Even the Vita could play PSP games,
Yeah, and the fact of the matter is Windows handhelds have existed for a few years now, or I guess depending on how far back you go. But the push to actually have these handhelds, like they've been around for a while now. There's no need for this to be Xbox branded. And doing so kind of does reveal, like, hey, Xbox, you are running 2 ecosystems. Are you ever going to merge them at any point? Or are you just going to do these? I guess not. You now just have 2 different environments that you're both calling both Xbox. And I don't know, seems confusing and kind of stupid.
Again, what are they telegraphing? You cannot play your console games on this new Xbox, and they've raised the price on the consoles.
But if you pay $20 or whatever it is per month, you can play all our games for free, Tom.
All your games for free for $20 a month. Yeah, I think it isn't. I didn't even think about this actually before we started recording, but now that I've read this, of course I am. It is an interesting thought experiment to think about if they would have tried to make it actually be backwards compatible. Like, what would it have been if Microsoft came out and said, yeah, it runs Windows, but it has an Xbox mode, and technically Xbox Series X runs, I believe, a Windows kernel. So actually, no,
Sure.
This can play all of your games. And look, they're not all going to be ready at launch, but we are now taking the time to port all of your Xbox games to Strix and Van Gogh. And that's going to be the basis of eventually letting you play all of your Xbox library on Windows, eventually with the Game Pass app that lets you just, you can pay $20 a month and you'll get access to all of these games, but that will also give you access to every other game you've ever bought that you can now download in an Xbox environment on Windows. And it's going to take work, but it's doable because it runs a kernel of Windows. That would have told me, yeah, look, they want to get out of the console business, maybe, but maybe they don't. That's actually an interesting hybrid thing they're doing. And, even if they want to get out of the console business, can you imagine, if this is obviously doesn't really make sense because this is pre the modern gaming world, but the Dreamcast, what if when Sega canceled the Dreamcast, they had a Dreamcast app on PC that somehow let you play all your games on PC with, I guess you'd have to use a CD then, but you know what I mean? That's an interesting, you're not losing consolation prize to people who have supported you for years, but they're not doing that. They're saying those games are gone and we're raising the price of your console. Too bad.
I mean, it really just seems like Microsoft as a whole isn't sure what they want to do with Xbox at this point. And it's kind of their, I don't know, hobbling, struggling brand where in a company that's, I don't know, running a lot of pretty profitable brands.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so there's two reactions I have to this. The first one is, guys, stop calling us a hater. You just have Stockholm syndrome. We are the ones fighting for your interests and trying to point out Xbox is just completely fucking over their console fans with this. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're a PC gamer, this is awesome. It looks like Windows, they're now going to start working on making Windows be more efficient. This is going to bring more competition to the Steam Deck. I have nothing but excitement that maybe Microsoft is finally figuring out that they need to make games run well on Windows and try to make them as optimized as they are on the Steam Deck. I cannot tell you how many videos I've seen and how many, like Wendell from Level 1 Text was just on saying that he took a Strix Halo laptop, put SteamOS on it, and now games run better. Like, that needs to stop happening. Windows should be a good gaming environment. And from that perspective, as a PC gamer, this is great news. It's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Angel of Cake writes in and says, with the Xbox handheld looking to be real, yes, it is definitely, well,
unless he means the in-house one.
Yeah, which is supposedly sidelined. But how quickly do you think someone will hack SteamOS on it right away? And how much do you think my new Microsoft subsidized Steam Deck knockoff is going to cost? That's a funny way to think about it, is will people just buy this, use SteamOS, and then get 3 times the performance of the Steam Deck running SteamOS? Probably that will become an option, unless we'll see. Unless Microsoft has a way of locking it down.
Yeah, which I could see.
How much? What will it cost, though? I saw there were rumors out there. I'm not going to quote them because I don't know if they're true. I didn't do the due diligence to look into them, but if I should trust this person. But I think there's rumors of it being like $799 and $499. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's what I could believe. That's what I think me and NX Gamer. He thought it actually might be more than that. That's my suspicion, is this will be $799. I think what I said too in the last podcast with NX Gamer was, if it's like $599 or less, okay, well, they're still kind of serious here. Clearly, they want there to be a footprint from Xbox devices that is more than just, we're throwing it out there because we can, kind of like a Surface. We want this to be real market share against Sony. But if it's $799 or more, which I kind of expect, this is them going, we're doing it because we can, but this isn't really going to compete with Sony.
Well, if it's 800, then this just feels like they just struck up some business deal with Asus and they slapped Xbox branding on it, a thing that Asus was already developing. Because 800 is the low end of what I would expect for the follow-up to the ROG Ally.
Yeah.
Like that, to 800 to I don't know, 1100 maybe if there's a very expensive version of it, or if at the absolute maximum end for what they would charge. But 800, this is just the pricing for a handheld.
Yeah. Well, it's probably a bit cheaper than what someone else would charge, because it only has 24 gigabytes of RAM. So I would say it's still much more competitively priced, and there's probably some subsidization there from Microsoft trying to keep the price down so that it sells better than it usually would. But anything at 800 or higher tells me they're not really serious about market share in a way that Sony or Nintendo would be. They might be, they're more serious than Lenovo is with the Legion Go, but they're not as serious as like a traditional console maker would be for market share. Logic Warrior writes in and says, Xbox's in-house handheld project was never going to have a happy ending, I feel. It is completely run by the client division team, which is the Surface product team. Phil's only involvement, from what I've gathered talking to people from a leadership standpoint, is to put a stamp of approval on it and pretend he understands. Look up Project Keystone to better understand that. Basically, had this gone according to plan, they would have had a cloud handheld that would be competing with other streaming devices. As it stands now, cloud gaming is a no-go overall. At this point, I'm not surprised Microsoft as a whole is pivoting away from the client and gaming aspects of Windows. What was a primary product in the past, it is not a moneymaker like it used to be. I have to imagine that this is another step on the death march of Windows gaming. I hope not. My take would be they're taking it more seriously, but I guess we'll see where this goes, because I'd assume this stuff will come to standard Windows. I'm convinced at this point Xbox is done. Sure, I agree with that. And we are going to watch it slowly fade away, kind of like a certain graphics product from a certain company. Yeah, maybe. I disagree that this is Microsoft leaving gaming on Windows. I think it's always going to be second fiddle to their services division of 365 milking, but I think this could lead to Microsoft gaming having a more of a renaissance on PC. I'm not willing to just be a hater here about everything.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, Xbox in general is just confusing. I don't know if they're going to eliminate it as a brand eventually, because for the longest time, I think at least Xbox as a brand bought goodwill from people, because early on Phil Spencer, I think, did a good job of portraying like a gamer friendly Xbox brand, but that slowly seems to be fading away. And at this point, I feel like the Xbox brand is kind of an anchor for Microsoft. So I'm not saying that means that they get rid of gaming, but I could see it just becoming a less forward division of Microsoft, or a less, I don't know, independent brand within Microsoft, and like all those gaming studios slowly just become less Xbox affiliated, more Microsoft affiliated or something.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that doesn't mean Windows gaming dies. It's still a pretty big platform for gaming.
Yeah. And I guess what I would say, to Malak Warrior as well, is it's like, well, but making Windows gaming better is them pivoting away from spending as much on gaming. Because the problem was they were spending all of this money on games for Windows Live and Xbox 360 and Xbox One, and then all these other things with that as well. And then kind of neglecting PC gaming, folding them all into one thing on Windows and improving the performance of Windows gaming is going to be substantially cheaper than all this other crap they've been doing. So I think they can pivot away from gaming without abandoning it. And if they do that, that would still make Windows gaming a lot better than it was 5 years ago, probably.
Yeah, I mean, in the long run, it could be a positive. Who knows? Rather than, it's not really talked about that as often that way, but it is. Microsoft does just run two different environments for gaming, and if that got more folded into one, maybe that's better for gamers long term.
It's better for gamers, and it might also just cost them a lot.
Probably
less.
Makes more sense.
Yeah, should have been doing it the whole time would be my argument, but I digress. We don't need to beat a dead horse anymore on that one. All right, let us now move on to the final story with story number 7. PlayStation Handheld basically confirmed in new leak. So I'm just going to quote, just to make it easy here, Yahoo's summarization of a leak I put out from a live stream recently. The PS5 and PS5 Pro are reportedly getting a new developer mode that signals a major development. According to insiders, a known Sony leaker has gotten a hold of documents which suggests that the company is rolling out a low power mode for both consoles, enabling which would draw less power and lower energy consumption while running games. Without going into too much technical jargon, therefore, it seems that this mode will run games with reduced specs but have a similar experience. And also, this leaker, me, is convinced that this mode is designed for games to run on a rumored PlayStation handheld eventually. All right, so here's the write-up in addition to that. With Switch 2 launching a nominally Xbox handheld announced, of course, we had to get some PlayStation handheld news to complete the trinity. I do not know the joke you were trying to make, Carbon Crime, and to move on. And thankfully, we did get just that. We learned that developers are being briefed on a new low power mode for their games on PS5. This is a flag they can enable to run the game with reduced hardware performance. And again, so right now there's PS5 mode, everybody. And then there's like a backwards compatibility, multiple flags for PS4 on PS5. There's PS5 Pro mode. And this is something that you literally check as a developer, and then there's like a way to have it configured for that. And then just so over time, compatibility is simplified going forward. So this is a new flag. This will appear to developers. Is this running the game in PS5 Pro mode, PS5 mode, or now low power mode? In low power mode, it has only 8 CPU threads available, half of them. GPU clocks 10 to 20% lower. Just below 2 gigahertz is what I believe it will be. Because again, it's a dynamic, like you can have compatibility and meet PlayStation certification on the PS5 if your game just runs really hot and it's usually around 1.97 gigahertz or something. Anything below that, they don't certify it. But that means that any game could technically run that well throttling and it would still not break the game. So there's that. Only 36 compute units enabled. Memory clocks at 50%. So far, no PSSR or PSVR support. And actually, this was interesting. Reduced true audio processing. The people forget there is a 37th compute unit in the PS5 or 61st in the PS5 Pro that is a dedicated audio processing one. That one runs at 75% performance. So I guess that's another way to save some power there. And all of this does not technically break compatibility with PS5 games. of what the certification is, it would just probably run, 15 to 30% worse in performance. Well, maybe cutting power in half. I don't know how much lower, but it would cut power down probably quite a bit. But anyway, so why is Sony doing this? It's not like many people are desperate to save power with a home console. It doesn't really make sense to prepare for lower performance than their base console offers unless, well, like I suggested in the video, I believe there is a new device on the way with lower performance than the base PS5 and with bigger pressure to, so let me just skip ahead here. That's the point. I believe this is a Sony's Trojan horse to get developers to have their games support the PS5 handheld or PS6 handheld with PS5 games in handheld mode. And this just makes a boatload of sense to me. You could have all of these developers not leaking. Too bad, already did. Not leaking that there's a PS5 handheld around the corner, but maybe a couple years before launch, they already have every game out, have a handheld mode, and Sony can just come out and go, boom, 90% of games that you would actually play, maybe not some indie games that no one's supporting. These all already support the PS5 handheld. I think that's what's going on.
Yeah, when you told me about the low power thing, that was my first thought was, oh, well, this is a effort to get games running on a new handheld coming out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why you would want a low powered PS5 at your home unless, I don't know, you're in an area with very expensive energy, then I guess it makes sense. But
or you're powering it from a battery in an electric car or something on a camping trip. There's the way I look at it actually is, why not? I mean, if they're going to,
it's not a negative to have it.
And they should do the same thing for the PS6. If there's a PS6 handheld, there should be a PS6 low power mode because they basically have to support that anyways. But go on.
Yeah, yes, I would still support you being able to turn on low power mode on your PS5 if you want to, but I don't know why there would be a big effort unless there was some lower powered thing that they're about to put out, and I don't know why, unless they're trying to put out a PS5 stick. I'm guessing it's a handheld.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I don't really know what much else to say about this. I'll be really curious how the performance turns out. I don't really expect it to be that much lower. That's the final thing that will really be interesting is like, is it, you cut the bandwidth in half, you cut the clocks down 10%. Does it still run mostly the same in a lot of games at a capped frame rate while cutting power down by, is it just 20 watts or do they cut power in half? Because from that, we'll be able to do some scratch math on the minimum power consumption they'll be able to achieve on a handheld as well. And I'll also be curious with the PS5 Pro, which is on 4 nanometer. Like, does going from 60 to 36 compute units and lower clocks on 4 nanometer make this thing use 50 watts? I don't know. That'd be interesting. And again, if it does, then you go, well, okay, so a purpose-built device will easily fit within a handheld. All right. That is it for the stories. Now let us move on to the wrap-up. These are, of course, the stories that we don't think really deserve some full 5 to 15 minute conversation, but they certainly deserve a mention. One here, Tech Epiphany, announced that he is done reporting on retail sales. There's no way to really know for sure how accurate it was, but I've had some sources tell me that, who are in the more consulting space, tell me they reverse engineered some of his stuff and dug. And they thought they were direct numbers, from like Mind Factory and stuff. And so that's unfortunate. This was something that was easy to point to for trends. It was one data point. You would use this and then I would combine that with talking to people at Micro Centers, Best Buys, Amazon, yada, yada, Overclockers UK, yada, yada, all these people I talked to. But it was really nice to have that as another third-party data point that aren't people I talked to. And I'm going to miss that being reported.
Yeah, hopefully they'll come back, or he'll come back at some point. He just said for a while, so maybe it's a temporary retirement.
Yeah, and to be fair too, I have no idea how much work went into this.
Oh yeah, it could be a ton. And if it is, I understand why they would want to not put a ton of work into doing that.
Mm-hmm. Supposedly some 9700F is incoming. This would be, of course, therefore an 8-core Zen 5 without integrated graphics enabled. Rumors are that it's like 200 to 250. Again, there's a reason this is in its own story. Yep. I don't know. I believe it. Could happen. Also, this was something that was in my new Zen 7 leak video. that I just thought should get a mention as its own little thing, which is that I've known this for a while now, but I finally decided, hey, it might be fun to like fill out this video by telling everybody this example of something that I say all the time, which is when something's years away, things can change, which, Zen 7, I believe, is expected end of 27, maybe 28. Okay. Well, I was told years ago that Zen 6, or I was told I won't say, well, it depends how you. I was told in the past that Zen 6 actually originally was planning to do two 16-core CCDs, but half of the cores in each CCD would be C cores. And they decided, no, people probably just want 24 cores anyways. And like, why are we really going to starve, little bandwidth starved, maybe perform a little worse? No, let's do a unified 12-core CCX. That is what people want. And there was another one too, actually. This is new. I didn't say this in that video either. After that, also AMD source reached out to me and said, by the way, there was also a design for like a 8 as high clocking as we can get one, and like a 16-core all Zen 6C one as well, or something. I believe that's what it was. There may have even been I think that's what he meant by that. I don't think he meant it was like 16 all C, 16 non C. I think so. They've played around with a lot of ideas with Zen 6, and so when I leaked 16 core chiplets for Zen 7, two of those, don't discount the fact that they could just go to 12 cores, or who knows, 14. There's going to be 33 core, by the way, EPYC chiplets. Who's to say they couldn't do two 14-core Zen 7 chiplets? It's going to depend what AMD thinks makes sense. And so just a reminder, but I do think it's funny to imagine what that would have been like if they had two 8+8 chiplets. If they would have been fully unified with the L3, that would be good. But I would guess that would mean there's two CCXs per chiplet, which would have hurt gaming performance. Mm-hmm. For how much multi-threading we need at this point on Windows desktop, I don't know. Also, this just came out, a HBM roadmap that shows HBM 8 planned for 2038 with, let me see.
Wait for that.
Is this correct? Am I reading this correctly here that it would be 64 terabytes? Oh my God, it would be. It'd be 64 terabytes per second per stack.
Well, I'm excited for 2030.
Remember, it's a moving target. Who knows? 100,000 CUDA cores by then. Probably, right? What the heck we'll be doing. But I do.
We won't even have computers anymore in 2030.
Yeah, computers will have us. Whoa. Oh, wow. But yeah, so there's HBM4 in 2 years, which is 2 terabytes per second. That's more bandwidth than a 5090 per stack. A few years after that, double. A few years after that, double, I guess. And then I guess with HBM7, they're looking to go nuts. I guess we'll see how what actually ends up happening. But it is funny to think that if it's per stack there, that, look, that would probably mean that by like a decade from now, let's just say, we will have graphics cards that have like low-end ones that have more bandwidth than a 5090. But that's just how the march of technology works.
Yes, that's how time
just
works.
Hope the low-end GPUs aren't $1,000. We'll see. This is notable, in my opinion, because we've talked about it so much. Black Myth Wukong is officially coming to Xbox after they finally got it working on the Xbox Series S. Don't have much to add to that. It's just, I gotta say, at this point, I was kind of wondering if it would ever come to it, but I guess there it is. And here in good news for the Nintendo Switch 2, I know it doesn't have an OLED screen, but it's been reported that the screen it does have is basically indestructible. They hit it with metal pliers 50 times and I think got it to crack a little, but nothing stopped working.
No, that's good.
Yeah, and barely crack. So I guess that's what they prioritize is, again, because this is, let's be honest, half for kids, making sure that this thing cannot be broken by being thrown around. I will say I would like this screen on my next phone, please. Hello. I do not need a 4K phone. I need a phone that doesn't eventually crack.
Screen, yes, it would be nice if phone screens did the same thing.
All right. Let's see here. We have two more reader mails and then a voicemail. Jensen Wang writes in and says, Is there a breaking point, in your opinion, where developers you speak with would rather have a blazing fast SSD instead of more RAM? Like for the PS6, for example, Sony does well over a magnitude faster with 16-lane PCIe 7, where the game preloads all its assets into a 256 gigabyte plus SSD, doing nearly 250 gigabit per second transfers each way. Would need to be 2 magnitudes faster. How about if it could actually work like Optane promised it would? Yeah, I didn't unfortunately ask a developer beforehand on this, but this is something I've kind of asked them the whole time. I think it like how many magnitudes slower? Like if the SSD was half as fast as the PS5's GDDR6, would they take 256 gigabytes of it? Yes. I actually think any slower than that, I'm not sure they would. Like, because it is a major determiner of performance. And I think there's enough they can do to get around it if it's just compute. But I think any slower than that, no, it wouldn't be enough.
Mm-hmm. Well, and just as RAM capacities are really taking off, it just doesn't seem like it's that much of a factor for PC anyways. Because, I don't know, you can get a ton of RAM on your PC now anyways.
Mm-hmm. No News writes in and says, what is the chance that Nvidia wins the SoC for the Valve Deckard? So this is some new rumored, I believe, VR puck that Valve's working on. If Nvidia can show good performance at low power with both Proton and x86 emulation on an ARM CPU, it would put them in a strong position for handhelds and even for Windows laptops if it is really launched at the end of this year, though, like some rumors have suggested. I was told the Steam Deck 2 uses AMD. So let's put that to the side. Now, granted, I was told that I believe a year ago or something. So I maybe something's changed. Now, so with that in mind, I'm going to change the question to, would they ever use NVIDIA for some other device? I don't know, maybe. I mean, you've already got a lot of games programmed for ARM for the Quest. So like, yeah, like if it's like these companies are in a business. If it's a good thing, a good product, they will use that product. I don't think they care. I just think what Valve's seen so far from AMD, at least for the next Steam Deck, I believe they want to use AMD, but it wouldn't surprise me, if they had an NVIDIA offering eventually. It's very different than like PlayStation, where it better be a lot better for them to switch to NVIDIA for AMD.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, there's also a bunch of other companies, who knows, maybe it will end up in some other handheld or type or mobile machine or whatever.
All right, and we have one more voicemail here from Techno. I want to thank them for submitting. Remember, you can submit voicemails if you join the Patreon. Here we go.
Hello, Tom and guest for the week. If, as Tom suggests, Navi 48 Ultimate is using TSMC N3X, how would we expect die size to be affected? Would we expect it to still be 357mm squared, or would we expect it to be smaller due to the higher transistor density, with it potentially being between 220 and 280mm squared? Would it actually still be called Navi 48, or will it have a different die name, bracket like Vega 10 versus Vega 20? Kind regards, Wallace Kerner.
Thank you, Wallace. I think it's very, very likely if they go to N3X. Well, so let's do the name first. Yes, they probably give it a new name, first of all. Yeah. I just call it Navi 48X because I think everyone knows what I mean when I call it that as a shorthand. Now, would the die size be smaller on N4X? I actually think it might be a little bigger. Like, I wouldn't surprise me if they made it slightly larger to get higher clocks for less thermal as a result of less thermal density, and maybe the GDDR7 would take up a little more space. So, I think that'd be slightly bigger. Now, if they go to N3X, yeah, I think it would be a little smaller. I mean, it depends. I talked to Kerry Nosagata about this before we started recording. It depends how much they just want clock speed. If they only go for clock speed, they want that last 200 megahertz, then all you would want to do is performance, not density, with the new node. Having said that, I don't know. Sure. Vega 20, which is the Radeon 7, everybody, managed to get like 20, 30, like 20% higher clocks while being like 40% smaller or something like that. I can't see this not being smaller. I think yes, it would probably be sub 330 millimeter squared, at least maybe sub 300 if it comes out on N3X, whether it comes out at all. And because it always seems to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
and if it gets a Radeon 7 style release, I don't know. Yeah, a couple years down or a year later, I don't know why it wouldn't be smaller unless they're just,
you can go for power, density, or higher clocks with a new node, or a combination of them. But it's almost always a combination of them. I would expect it to be at least below 350 millimeter, like 330 millimeter squared, like something around 300 or maybe, but clocked much faster. I'd be very, very surprised if it was on some 3 nanometer node and not smaller. All right. Well, that is going to do it for this episode of Broken Silicon. I want to thank everybody for listening and watching. Remember, like this, comment down below for the algorithm, or comment on what you think about any of these things we talked about. I'm certain that there's no hot takes I've had this episode as usual that will make people disagree with me, but if you do, we appreciate, I respond in the comments. I don't mind. Please tell us what you think. And then also make sure you're subscribed to the Moore's Law is Dead YouTube channel. Ring the bell button. Subscribe to Broken Silicon on your podcast app of choice. Turn on automatic downloads and give us a review on on that podcast app as well. And then join Moore's Law is Dead on Patreon. We've got a new die shrink that just came out. We've got my plan is to have on a game developer soon. We'll see if this is the next step, but I think it will be, who has a lot to say about the Switch 2, the PlayStation handheld, what's going on with RDNA 4 and Nvidia, and also some new details that we're hearing about some developments with PlayStation. I won't say more than that. I won't say more than that, but you can ask us questions if you join us at the lowest tier. And higher tiers, of course, get access to voicemails, reader mails, free questions on live streams, early ad-free Broken Silicon, and there's other things as well you get at higher tiers. So please, we cannot do this without our patrons. We don't get any free hardware from these companies without having that core base of support that allows us to know that even if we made, Nvidia try to strong arm sponsors or something like that, we'd always have those people supporting us. That is what allows us to speak so freely. So please support us there. And otherwise, Dan, any final words?
I don't think so.
Well, I know you need to move into a new house tomorrow. So, Dan, thank you for coming on. Thank you for calling in from this I won't make a bad joke. From an undisclosed location. Thank you for calling in from this captive location that you're in. And everybody, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and have a good rest of your week.
Bye.
This podcast was brought to you by the YouTube channel and website Moore's Law is Dead. Moore's Law is Dead and Broken Silicon are trademarks of their creator, Tom. That guy is me, and I am indeed the creator, editor, writer, and showrunner of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, videos, articles, and other media. However, it's not just me. Moore's Law is Dead is a team, with Broken Silicon co-hosted by my brother Dan, audio editing by Gerard Cortez, renders being done by the industrial designer Jean-Philippe Clermont, and special assistance is also provided by Carmen Cry and Carrie Nosugada as well. Find all of our information at www.mooreslawsdead.com on the About/Support page. In the event you do want to hire me for consulting work, hire Gerard for audio work, hire Jean-Philippe for industrial design work, or you're interested in working with Carbon Cry or Carrie Nosugada as well. You can also find our long-term sponsors on that page if you want to show them some love for putting food on our tables. Or you can also mail us some love. You can send letters or hardware donations to the following address: Moore's Law is Dead, P.O. Box 60632 in Nashville, Tennessee, zip code 37206. Although, to be honest, the best way to show Moore's Law is Dead some love is to support us on Patreon. Patrons are what makes Moore's Law is Dead content truly possible. Every month, and really every day, depending on who you're talking about, me, Gerard, Dan, and Jean-Philippe are working tirelessly to provide a steady stream of content that we could not keep doing unless we knew the work was possible without being reliant on sponsors dictating every little thing we put out. Don't get us wrong, we love our sponsors, but we love directly working for you, our fans, much more. If you have any extra money, even a couple free dollars a month, consider supporting us directly on Patreon. Those couple of monthly dollars will get you access to the exclusive podcast Die Shrink, voting on subjects of future podcast episodes, the ability to ask guest questions, and of course, access to the Moore's Law is Dead Discord full of like-minded people who I am sure would love to meet you. I am one of them. Additionally, higher tiers get access to early, ad-free episodes of Broken Silicon, the ability to ask questions in all Broken Silicon episodes and Loose Ends live streams ahead of the recording, and the entire back catalog of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, in addition to having thanks in the credits of videos and podcasts depending on the tier, with other perks available as well. And hey, if you cannot afford to support us directly every month, please do share Moore's Law is Dead videos and podcasts with friends and family, and on social media and websites like Reddit. And give Broken Silicon a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast app of choice. All of this does really help us so much. But like I said, this podcast would not be possible without the patrons directly providing predictable and reliable support every month. And so now it is time to give a personal thanks to the greatest of the fans. The following supporters are at the 10 gigahertz or higher supported levels: Brad Medlin, Drita Foles, Z Jits, Daniel D, Dake, Nicholas Buckner, Aaron Close, Jan Rauner, Daniel Hyde, MJB1, GZ Siggy, Toka, Compressed AI Blocks, NSNES Chalmers, Jem Ferrier, Valkamalev, Jensen Wang, Gregor Sacro, Sarcastro, Chris Rich, Evan Dingle, Hal Buma, Shredbird, Semi Malas, The Boss Haas, Tommy, Chrysanthenos, Jonathan, Nithra Zink, Amiable Chief, Jake223, I Should, Jake Martin, Zlicky, Gamers Unite, Meat and Pork, Tim Robb, Ian Clifford, Travis Gooding, Mad, Zutsu Taylor, Greg, Michael McGee, Patty Cake, Stephen Coates, Mark Mitchell, James Anderson, Mark Raidmaker, Coal Addict, Cameron, Henry Zhang, Wesley Sager, Michelle Pell, Win Wang, Hexapuma, Reginald Ari, Teak Autumn, Windstar, Corey Leonard, James I. Raider, Little Germany, Shay, Milton, John Swin, Brett Jones, Chuck Glidden, Mac Daffy, Stephen Dick, Justin Bustle, Austin Haggerty, Joe Foot, Brian Scanlon, Harlan Jansen, Angima, Joseph Kelly, Slushpa, Himsa Gung, Tails2299, Brian Wright, Sisyphos7771, The Forbidden Juice, RB Racer, Alex Vega, Freedy, Michael Cozy, Thalo215, Crystal Joe, Elbergun, Kicum, Solarized 80, Sprutnik, Brian P, Hoodat42, Cornster671, Penta Winter 37x73, Hal Richard, Omega Doge, State Farm, Snake, Mr. Tiger, AI Soldier 789, John Wick Boomstick, Hugo Ender Kiwi, Penguins Love AI, Porcelain Oats, Curry King 3, Nick Mania, Rahel Cheap Bulls, Sheriff Lotfi, Smash Axley, Kevin Kuntz, Karam Al Masri, Armand Vakatura, Jonathan Harris, Kalan Raichel, Kainush, Kagani, Zubar, Ahmad, and Angel of Cake. And of course, thank you to Sahara for the music.